Power is supposed to make things predictable, but around presidents, reality gets strangely flexible. Behind the podiums and motorcades are rumors of ghosts, vanishing acts, bizarre habits, and choices so odd they barely sound human. Tonight, we slip past the velvet ropes and into the stories history keeps in the shadows. Tonight, every story ties back to unbelievable tales about presidents most people never hear about. Here's how TruLies works. You're about to hear 7 presidential stories, each presented exactly the same way. But behind the scenes, 4 of them are pulled straight from real history, and 3 are carefully crafted fictions. Your job is to listen closely, trust your instincts, and then doubt them. At least one of your instincts will betray you. As we go, keep your own score, lock in your guesses, and drop your final tally in the comments. Don't skip ahead, but don't peek at the verdicts, and stay to the end to see just how well you can separate presidential truth from presidential legend. Tonight's episode is told in 7 chapters, each one a different brush with power and the uncanny. Some tales will feel too ridiculous to be real. Others will sound almost boring until one detail twists the knife. As you hear them, decide quickly which ones you trust and which you're ready to throw out. Here are tonight's 7 stories of unbelievable presidents. Let's begin. Story 1 pulls us into the most private room in the White House, and a crisis no president ever wants on the record. They say one American president once got stuck in the White House bathtub, but the real story, hiding behind the joke, is stranger, kinder, and a lot more human than the punchline. Picture the White House around 1909. Gaslights humming, servants in stiff uniforms, and a new president, William Howard Taft. Gentle, brilliant, and weighing around 300 pounds, trying to live a normal life under an unforgiving spotlight. Taft loved food, hated conflict, and actually dreamed of being a judge, not a politician. But what the world obsessed over most was simple and cruel: his size. Soon, newspapers started whispering that he'd gotten wedged in the White House bathtub, staff supposedly yanking and pushing in a chaotic rescue that left the president mortified. Historians later combed through letters, diaries, and staff records and found no proof this embarrassing moment ever happened. But they did find something just as unbelievable. On a 1909 voyage to Panama, Taft discovered the ship's bathtub was way too small, and word leaked to reporters that even basic fixtures didn't fit the new president. Engineers and craftsmen at J.L. Mott Ironworks designed a gigantic porcelain tub over 7 feet long and nearly 3 feet wide, so huge that 4 grown men once climbed in together for a photo to prove its ridiculous size. Getting this monster tub into the White House became a mini engineering saga. Workers reinforced floors, measured doorways, and carefully hoisted and inched it through the mansion like a fragile porcelain boat. Behind closed doors, Taft finally had something simple he'd always wanted: a bathtub he fit in comfortably, while outside, the press kept turning that private, practical choice into cartoonish jokes. So no, he almost certainly never got stuck in the White House bathtub, but the custom tub big enough for 4 men swung into the mansion with military-level planning. That part is 100% real. Take a breath. We're just getting started. Story 2 lifts its eyes to the night sky and asks what a future president thought he saw. On a chilly January night in 1969, outside a small Lions Club meeting in tiny Leary, Georgia, local farmer and politician Jimmy Carter stepped into the parking lot, chatting with friends under a dark, ordinary southern sky. Mid-conversation, someone pointed upward. Above the pine trees hung a single blazing light, brighter than any star, sharper than any planet, too still and too silent to be an airplane. The group fell quiet as the object slowly shifted colors, from white to blue, then to red, then back again, glowing as if it made its own light, with no clear shape, just an intense, floating brilliance. For 10 to 12 long minutes, they watched it drift closer, then farther away, climb and dip in the distance, moving in ways that didn't match any weather balloon, commercial jet, or familiar military craft. Carter, a former Navy officer who had studied engineering and physics, mentally checked off the usual explanations: Venus, atmospheric tricks, secret planes, but none fit what he and a dozen witnesses were seeing. Finally, without a sound, the light shot off and vanished into the night, leaving several people visibly shaken, and Carter quietly puzzled by an encounter he couldn't file away as just another strange story. 4 years later, in 1973, Long before the presidency was in reach, Carter sat down and filled out an official UFO report by hand, listing Leary, Georgia, the time, the duration, and every detail he could remember. He checked the box saying it was not a conventional aircraft, insisted he didn't think it was an alien spaceship, yet firmly called it what it was to him, a genuine, unidentified flying object. When reporters uncovered the old report during his 1976 presidential campaign, believers praised his honesty, skeptics mocked the candidate who saw a UFO, and Carter calmly repeated the same story without turning it into science fiction. As president, he never delivered the grand UFO revelations some hoped for, but that signed report from a quiet Georgia night remained, a rare moment when a future commander-in-chief admitted he once looked up and simply did not know. From the heavens to the plumbing, Story 3 zooms in on a commander-in-chief obsessed with a very personal storm of water. In the middle of the 1960s, when America was torn by the Vietnam War and civil rights battles, President Lyndon B. Johnson found himself obsessed with something oddly simple: the water pressure in his White House shower. Johnson had fallen in love with a brutal, fire hose-style shower at an Army hospital in Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and he demanded that the White House give him that same roaring, all-over blast every single morning. Normal plumbing didn't stand a chance, so engineers and plumbers were summoned to design a custom, multi-nozzle system, more like a human car wash than a presidential shower. They installed pipes that forced extra water into the bathroom, with jets aimed at his head, chest, and waist, trying to hit every spot exactly the way the president ordered. But LBJ was still unhappy, and he began calling plumbers at strange hours, late at night, early in the morning, demanding they come fix what he saw as a national emergency of weak water pressure. On secretly recorded White House tapes, you can hear Johnson giving intense, almost military-style instructions about angles, force, and where the water should hit, as if he were planning a campaign, not a shower. Again and again, workers tore into walls, rearranged pipes, changed valves, and added new nozzles, while the aging White House plumbing groaned under the constant redesigns. Aides later joked that more thought went into the president's shower than into some bills in Congress, as thousands of taxpayer dollars and countless hours disappeared into perfecting his private water cannon. Eventually, Johnson got what he wanted, a fierce, high-pressure blast that pummeled him awake each morning, powerful enough to be legendary among the staff. And so, while history remembers LBJ for war and civil rights, this story quietly reminds us that even the most powerful leader on Earth can fixate on something as ordinary and expensive as the perfect morning shower. Change lanes in your mind. Story 4 heads underground, where leisure, secrecy, and presidential stress collide. It's the early 1970s in Washington, D.C. The Vietnam War rages, Cold War tensions simmer, protesters fill the streets, and inside the glowing White House, one man carries the crushing weight of the presidency: Richard Nixon. Above ground, rooms buzz with urgent phone calls, policy briefings, and crisis meetings, but far below the elegant halls lies a quiet, hidden space almost no one ever sees. Years earlier, Harry Truman had a 2-lane bowling alley near the West Wing, but it was ripped out to make room for offices, leaving only the memory of presidents rolling strikes. In 1969, friends and supporters of the new president, Richard Nixon, secretly fund a fresh bowling lane, this time tucked into the basement of the old executive office building next door. Connected to the White House by secure underground corridors, the new alley hides behind a plain, forgettable door and a narrow hallway that most staff walk past without a second glance. Push that door open and the world suddenly changes. Polished wooden lane, humming pinsetters, racks of bowling balls, low ceilings, and fluorescent lights casting a soft, mechanical glow. Late at night, after the public schedule ends, Nixon slips downstairs in shirt sleeves, tie loosened, joined by a few trusted aides as Secret Service quietly guards the empty corridor. Phones are silenced, distractions vanish, and as Nixon sends a heavy ball crashing into the pins, he and his aides talk strategy, Vietnam, Congress, foreign leaders, all discussed between frames. For most people working upstairs, this alley is only a rumor, never on tours, rarely photographed, an invisible sanctuary where the president can be both powerful leader and ordinary bowler. Today, photos and records reveal the truth. beneath the world's most watched residence, Nixon once escaped to a secret single lane where the heaviest burdens of history met the simple joy of bowling. Reset your expectations. Story 5 walks the halls after dark, where history and haunting may not be so far apart. On a damp spring night in the mid-20th century, the White House finally falls silent, but one president lies awake on the second floor, staring at the thin line of darkness beneath his bedroom door. First comes a creak, then 3 slow, deliberate knocks, followed by soft, measured footsteps in the empty hallway, and a faint tangle of voices that sound close but never form real words. The president, who has stared down wars and crises without flinching, feels the hair rise on his arms as he calls out to the hallway and hears nothing answer, except a final, lonely knock. He yanks the bell for his military aide, and moments later the aide and a Secret Service agent hurry in, swearing they saw no one and heard nothing in the corridor that still feels charged and cold. Irritated more than afraid, the president growls that he's tired of whispered ghost stories about footsteps, knocks, and cold spots, and orders it all turned into something Washington understands, an official memorandum. He directs the Secret Service to log every unexplained nocturnal disturbance in the residence: footsteps with no source, doors opening or closing on their own, mysterious knocks, odd smells, flickering lights with no clear cause. Over the next nights, a graveyard shift agent quietly reports the sound of boots marching down a hallway that security cameras show as completely empty, time-stamped and signed in a dry incident report. A maid admits she sometimes smells strong cigar smoke near a room where a long-ago president once paced and thought, even though no one has smoked there in years, and an engineer logs repeated electrical glitches at the same late-night hour. All of it, dates, times, locations, and plain, careful descriptions, is typed into a thin, strictly worded document that staff half-jokingly nickname the Ghost Briefing, then stamp, restrict, and quietly bury in the files. Among a small circle of aides, people joke that even the dead want presidential access. Yet each night, worker who's felt unseen footsteps on the stairs wonders if, in some mislabeled folder, those yellowing pages still admit the White House isn't entirely alone. Now we leave ghosts behind and head into the wilderness of politics. Story 6 follows a bear and a deal you were never meant to hear about. In the early 1900s, a tough, outdoorsy president rode into the Mississippi woods, hunting dogs howling and reporters trailing behind, eager to capture the next great story of his courage and moral character. Before the rifles and cameras ever arrived, a local political boss made a quiet offer. He would help push the president's struggling bill through if he could first help stage a perfect moment of heroism. His plan was simple and dirty. Use a tame, half-exhausted black bear, tie it to a tree in a clearing, and make sure the president found it at just the right time, with witnesses nearby. Hours into a slow, frustrating hunt, a messenger galloped up to the president, breathless, claiming a bear had been cornered and injured. The hunting party followed eagerly along a carefully cleared path through the trees. In the clearing, the president saw the bear roped to a tree, weak and confused, the knots too neat, the handlers standing back too stiffly, the whole scene arranged like a stage waiting for its star. For a long moment, he simply stared, noticing the calm bear, the exchanged glances between the boss's men, and he seemed to understand instantly that this was no lucky break. It was a political setup. But he also knew his bill in Washington was hanging by a thread, and the boss controlled votes, jobs, and pressure. So the president chose not to expose the trick, but to use it. He loudly refused to shoot the tied bear, calling it unsportsmanlike, ordered it to be put down out of sight, and let the watching guides and staff carry that carefully crafted image back to the waiting reporters. Newspapers soon praised his mercy. Cartoonists drew him refusing to kill a small, frightened bear. Toy shops began selling cuddly teddy bears, and the sudden wave of public love helped squeeze his tough bill through Congress. Years later, a bitter guide remembered the ropes, the calm bear, and the president's knowing eyes, and wondered how many bedtime teddy bears were really stuffed with a quiet deal made deep in the woods. One more twist to go. Story 7 peers behind a vanished president and the stranger possibility of a stand-in smile. On a chilly California night in the mid-1950s, the President of the United States finished a quiet round of golf under floodlights, far from Washington, while reporters waited near the clubhouse for a simple, feel-good story. Around 8 p.m., the mood snapped. Secret Service agents shoved reporters back, aides whispered urgently, and one pale staffer announced that the president had chipped a tooth and was rushing to a local dentist. Nothing serious, everything under control. On paper, that's all that ever happened. A minor dental visit logged on the schedule, a few sparse medical notes, no sign of crisis. Yet staff who were there remembered panic, sprinting agents, and a sense that something much bigger was unfolding. A groundskeeper later recalled an unmarked dark sedan sliding up to a rarely used side entrance, boxed in by grim-faced Secret Service cars, from which stepped a man who looked almost like the president. Same build, same haircut, but somehow not quite right. Agents hurried this look-alike through a side door, then moments later guided him out again, wearing the president's recognizable light-colored jacket, shielding his face like a man with a toothache as cameras flashed and the waiting motorcade roared away. According to whispers among club employees, that man was a dental double, acting out the emergency for the press, while the real president had already been quietly driven from a back entrance with only a handful of trusted agents in the dark. In one deathbed recollection, a longtime employee claimed the true president was flown by a discreet military aircraft to a secret Cold War facility, no name on civilian maps, for an urgent, classified meeting about nuclear dangers or fresh intelligence from abroad. It was the age of hidden test sites, black-budget projects, and presidents who vanished for checkups that were never fully explained, so using a double to sell a harmless dental story would have been a clever way to move him unseen. Official Eisenhower health records confirm real medical scares and carefully managed information, yet no memo, flight plan, or document ever mentions a double that night, only a chipped tooth in Palm Springs and a routine visit to the dentist. So the history books list a simple dental emergency, while in the shadows lingers a more thrilling idea that for a few hours, the leader of the free world slipped away to a secret Cold War meeting, leaving a silent double in his jacket to fool the world. 7 stories, 4 truths, 3 lies. Some sounded absurd, some almost reasonable, and a few hovered right in between. Maybe you trusted the familiar names, or maybe you assumed the wildest tales had to be inventions. It's time to see where your instincts led you and where they turned on you. Story 1. The president who got stuck in the White House bathtub was real. Contemporary reports and later historical accounts document Taft's size, the custom-built oversized tub, and the quiet effort to keep it out of the official narrative. Story 2. The president who filed a UFO sighting was real. Jimmy Carter's own written report, filed years before his presidency, still exists as a documented UFO claim linked directly to a future commander-in-chief. Story 3. The president obsessed with his shower was real. Memos, recordings, and staff recollections describe Lyndon Johnson's relentless demands for a bespoke, high-pressure shower system that consumed time, labor, and money. Story 4. Nixon's secret bowling alley under the White House was real. Photographs, architectural records, and White House documentation confirmed a private lane built for presidential use, tucked away beneath the public image of the residence. Story 5. The night a president demanded a ghost briefing was fictional. We built this one by exaggerating real White House ghost legends and giving them a paper trail and presidential memo that never actually existed. Story 6. The president who secretly swapped a bear for a political favor was fictional. It twists the true origin of the teddy bear, layering in a staged hunt and a backroom legislative bargain that historians have never found evidence for. Story 7. The president's mysterious dental double was fictional. We wove together genuine Cold War anxieties, rumors about a vanished president, and modern conspiracy theories into a neat story of a dental decoy that history does not support. Add up your score, share it with TruLies in the comments, and remember, when it comes to presidents, the truth doesn't have to sound believable to be real.